24 hours ago, I was on stage in Ankara playing to a standing ovation. The illuminated auditorium, the sound of my music echoing, the pride in the eyes of the other Afghan musicians. Now hidden in the damp basement of an unfamiliar house, the only sound I hear is the rapid beating of my own heart and heavy footsteps on the floor above bearded men with intimidating appearances, who could be either my saviors or my jailers. My name is Wahid. I am 20 years old, and I have just become an enemy of the Afghan state simply for loving music and freedom. As I try to calm my breathing in this makeshift hideout, the questions don't stop. How did a young musician transform into a fugitive overnight? What will happen when my money runs out? Will I ever see my family again? This is the story of how my art transformed into my death sentence and my only hope for survival. The morning of my escape, I stood before the mirror in my hotel room in Ankara, my reflection a stranger to me. Wahid, are you ready to run away with only a backpack on your shoulder? I whispered. You're young. You don't have much money. How will you survive in Turkey? These questions haunted me, but they paled in comparison to the alternative. As a musician trained in the Soviet Union and now performing internationally, I had become too visible, too influential in the eyes of Dr. Najibullah's communist regime. My uncle Harun Serkabi, who had fled to America years before, had warned me through encoded messages that I was being watched, that this cultural tour to Turkey might be my only chance to escape. The plan was simple yet terrifying. During today's scheduled tour of Ankara's historic sites, I would slip away from the group. Kurdish separatists, coordinated by my uncle, would meet me at a predetermined location. I took one final look around the room. My suitcase with all my beautiful clothes, with my personal belongings, stay behind. Too conspicuous. Instead, I took only essentials, a change of my modern clothes, important documents, and some Turkish lira, and a folded photo of me from Soviet Union. With a deep breath, I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The other musicians were already gathering in the lobby, laughing and talking excitedly. Among them moved two men in plain clothes who never participated in these. Conversations agents from the Afghan Secret Service assigned to our cultural delegation. Their eyes constantly scanned the group, lingering occasionally on me. Our guide for the day, a cheerful Turkish woman named Aylin, was checking names off a list. Ah, Wahid, there you are. Now we're all accounted for. The bus ride through Ankara was a blur of anxiety. We stopped at Ankabir, the mausoleum of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, where large crowds of tourists would provide cover. Everyone will meet back at the main entrance in 90 minutes, Aylin announced as we disembarked. This was the moment. As the delegation broke into smaller clusters, I lagged behind, pretending to tie my shoe. The Secret Service agents were focused on the larger group ahead. With practiced casualness, I stood and walked, not ran toward a different path. Once out of sight, I quickened my pace, weaving through groups of tourists until I reached a side exit. Outside, the bright Turkish sun momentarily blinded me. I had memorized the route 3 blocks north and east toward a small cafe. My uncle's contact would be waiting there, reading a copy of Hurriyet newspaper. The cafe appeared ahead, its blue awning like a beacon. Inside, I spotted him, a heavy-set man with a thick mustache and the promised newspaper. I approached slowly and sat across from him. The coffee in Ankara is excellent this time of year, I said in broken Turkish, the prearranged phrase. His eyes narrowed as he studied me. Better than in Kabul, I'm told, he responded in the expected counterphrase. We must move quickly, he said in Uzbek, which I partially understood. They will notice your absence soon. We left immediately, the man leading me through a maze of backstreets to where a battered van waited. Two more men sat inside, both with the same hard eyes and wary expressions. Without introduction, they motioned me into the back and covered me with a blanket. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, the van stopped. Rough hands pulled me out, and I found myself being hustled into the basement entrance of an old building in a working-class neighborhood. "This is safe house," the first man explained as we descended narrow stairs. "You stay here until next arrangements." The basement room was small and sparsely furnished a cot, a small table, a chair, and a shared bathroom that smelled of mildew. A single bulb cast harsh shadows across water-stained walls. "Food there." He pointed to a small cabinet. "Water there. Do not leave room. Do not make noise. Do not look from window. Understand?" I nodded, throat too dry to speak. "Good. We come back tomorrow. Maybe." With that, they left, the sound of multiple locks engaging on the other side of the door. Alone in the silence, the full weight of what I had done crashed over me. I had abandoned my country, my career, my family. I was now illegal in a foreign land, dependent on strangers who seemed more like smugglers than saviors. I sank onto the cot and finally allowed myself to tremble, the adrenaline of the escape giving way to raw fear. Days passed in that basement, each identical to the last. My world shrank to counting cracks in the ceiling and listening to the heavy footsteps of the Kurdish men who came and went upstairs. They brought food, occasionally simple fare of bread, cheese, and sometimes stew, but conversation was minimal and tense. Through broken exchanges, I learned that they expected more money. My uncle had paid them, yes, but they wanted more to continue sheltering me. Each day, their demands grew more insistent, their manner more threatening. "Your uncle in America is rich man," one said, a burly figure I'd come to know as Mehmet. "He send more money, or you find new place to hide." I had no way to contact my uncle, no phone, no means of communication. I was completely at their mercy, and mercy seemed to be in short supply. From fragments of their conversations, I gathered that the Afghan Secret Service had raised the alarm. They were showing my photo on the streets, questioning locals, pressuring the Turkish authorities. The Afghan embassy in Ankara had officially requested my arrest and extradition. On my 5th day in captivity, it was captivity now, not sanctuary, I overheard a heated argument upstairs. Through the thin ceiling, the Kurdish men's voices carried clearly. "We should just hand him over," one said in Turkish. "The reward money is better than waiting for his uncle." "No," Mehmet responded. "Harun Surkabi will pay. We just need to pressure the boy more. And if he doesn't, we're harboring a fugitive wanted by 2 governments." I was no longer safe here, if I ever had been. I needed to escape again. That night, listening carefully, I realized the house was quieter than usual. No footsteps overhead, no voices. Could they all be gone? It might be my only chance. I examined the door, lock old but sturdy. However, the door frame itself was rotting in places from the damp. With enough force applied to the weakest point, I waited another hour, listening for any sound. Taking the metal leg I had quietly worked loose from the small table, I wedged it against the door frame where the wood showed the most decay and pushed with all my strength. The frame splintered with a crack that sounded deafening in the silence. I froze, waiting for footsteps, for shouts. None came. Heart pounding, I pushed the door open and crept up the stairs. The main floor was indeed empty, the front door locked, but with a key left in the inside lock. They had not expected their prisoner to break free. Outside, the night air hit my lungs like a revelation. Freedom, however precarious, tasted sweet after days underground. I had no plan, little money, and was still a wanted man, but I was no longer at the mercy of captors who saw me as nothing more than a payday. I walked quickly away from the house, keeping to shadows, having no idea where I was in the vast city of Ankara. For hours, I wandered through unfamiliar neighborhoods, eventually reaching a large park with a lake reflecting moonlight. Exhausted, hungry, and with nowhere else to go, I found a secluded bench partially hidden by trees. As I sat there, shivering in the cold Ankara night, watching white swans glide across the dark water, a peculiar calm settled over me. I had lost everything, yes, but in that loss was a strange kind of freedom. For the first time in my life, my future, however uncertain, was entirely my own. I reached into my pocket and found a crumpled business card. Dr. Hashim Yurdam, the kind Afghan physician I had met during the cultural festival. He had given me his contact information after treating me for a sore throat the day before my escape. In the distance, I spotted a payphone. With the few coins I had left, I could make one call, a single lifeline to cast into the darkness. Dawn was breaking over Ankara as I approached the phone booth, the card clutched in my trembling hand. I dropped the coins into the slot and dialed the number. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. My heart sank with each unanswered ring. Then, "Hello? Dr. Yurdam speaking." "Doctor," I said, my voice cracking. "This is Wahid, the musician from the Afghan delegation. You treated my throat last week." A pause. Had I made a terrible mistake? "Wahid, yes, I remember you." His voice grew concerned. "There has been quite a commotion about you. The newspapers say you've disappeared. Where are you calling from?" I hesitated, then pushed forward. "I'm in a park somewhere in Ankara. There's a lake with swans. I need help. I can't go back to Afghanistan. They'll kill me." Another pause, longer this time. I held my breath. "Stay exactly where you are," Dr. Yurdam finally said, his voice firm but kind. "Describe what you see around you." I detailed the park, the lake, the surrounding buildings. He asked several clarifying questions then. "I know where you are. Don't move." "I'll be there in 20 minutes." The line went dead, and I returned to my bench, caught between hope and terror. 20 minutes stretched into 30, and doubt gnawed at me. Had he called the authorities? Then I saw him, a distinguished figure in a neat jacket, scanning the park. I stood cautiously, and his eyes found me. The moment stretched between us, a thread of possibility that could either hold or snap. Dr. Yurdam walked directly to me, his face solemn. He stopped a few feet away, studying my disheveled appearance, the fear in my eyes. "You look hungry," he said simply, and held out his hand. In that moment, something broke inside me, the dam holding back days of terror and loneliness. I took his hand, and he pulled me into a brief, firm embrace, the kind a father might give a son. "Come," he said, leading me toward a parked car. "We have much to discuss, but first, food and a shower. You're safe now." As we drove through the awakening city, Dr. Yurdam explained that he had been following the news of my disappearance with interest. The Afghan authorities were claiming I was a subversive element, possibly even a spy. The Turkish media, however, had painted me as a brave dissident fleeing oppression, a narrative that resonated with many Turks. "The publicity may actually protect you," he said as we pulled up to an elegant apartment building in Chankaya, a central district of Ankara. "If you were to disappear now, there would be questions. We should use that to our advantage." His apartment was spacious and tastefully furnished, clearly the home of an educated, successful professional. He showed me to the guest bathroom, provided clean towels and a change of clothes, and promised food upon my emergence. The hot shower was transformative, washing away not just the grime of my ordeal, but some of the fear as well. When I emerged, a feast awaited: Turkish breakfast with bread, cheese, olives, tomatoes, and eggs. I ate ravenously while Dr. Yurdam outlined my options. "You have 3 paths forward," he said, sipping tea. "First, you could try to live underground, undocumented. This is precarious and would mean a life in the shadows." I nodded, chewing slowly. "Second, you could attempt to reach Europe, perhaps Germany or France, where asylum might be easier to obtain. But the journey would be dangerous and success far from guaranteed." The third option surprised me. Or you could voluntarily present yourself to the Turkish authorities, but on your terms, with media present, publicly requesting asylum as a persecuted artist. It's risky, but with the right approach and the current public interest, it might be your best chance for official protection. As Dr. Yildirim outlined the strategy, I began to see its merits. A public plea would make it harder for the Turkish government to simply deport me. It would force them to consider my case on humanitarian grounds. And most importantly, it would prevent the Afghan regime from quietly eliminating me if I were returned. "I'll help you," Dr. Yildirim promised. "I have contacts in the media and among advocacy groups, but the decision must be yours." As the morning sun filtered through the windows of his apartment, illuminating a future I hadn't dared imagine just hours before, I made my choice. Music had always been my voice, my way of speaking truth. Perhaps now, my story could be my most important composition. "I'll do it," I said, meeting his eyes with newfound resolve. "I'll tell my story, not just for me, but for all those still silenced in Afghanistan." Dr. Yildirim smiled, a look of quiet pride crossing his face. "Then we begin today. First, rest. Tomorrow, we make your voice heard." That night, in a clean bed in a safe place, I dreamt not of escape or pursuit, but of music new melodies that spoke of loss and hope, of endings and beginnings. In the morning, I would step into the light and reclaim my name, my story, my future. The symphony of my exile was just beginning its first movement. The police station loomed before me, a concrete monolith that could become either my sanctuary or my prison. Dr. Hashim Yildirim stood beside me, a steadying presence in his pressed suit and confident demeanor. Behind us, a small crowd had gathered, journalists with cameras and microphones, representatives from human rights organizations, and a handful of local Turkish musicians who had responded to Dr. Yildirim's calls. "Remember," he said quietly, "speak from the heart. Your story is your power." The past 48 hours had been a whirlwind. After my rescue from the park, Dr. Yildirim had worked tirelessly, contacting journalists, advocacy groups, and even a few sympathetic officials in the Turkish government. "The publicity is your protection," he had explained. "The more people who know your face and your story, the harder it will be for them to simply make you disappear." Cameras flashed as we walked through the gathered press. A young woman thrust a microphone toward me. "Mr. Omid, why have you fled the Afghan cultural delegation?" I paused, remembering our strategy. Music should unite people, not divide them. In Afghanistan, my art had become a political weapon, one that could be turned against me at any moment. "I seek only the freedom to play my music without fear." I spoke of the growing repression in Afghanistan, the threats against artists and intellectuals, the narrowing space for free expression. I was careful not to directly attack Dr. Najibullah's regime. My family was still there. After all, but made it clear that my decision to seek asylum was born of genuine fear, not political opportunism. Inside the station, the bureaucracy was cold and methodical. I was photographed, fingerprinted, questioned extensively. Hours passed. Dr. Yildirim was not permitted to stay with me, but his presence in the waiting area was a comfort. Finally, a senior officer entered the interview room, a file folder in his hand. "Mr. Omid," he said in accented English, "your situation is complicated. We have received formal requests from the Afghan government for your immediate return. They claim you are in breach of contract with the Cultural Ministry and that you have stolen valuable government property." My heart sank. That's not true. I left everything behind, even my instruments. The officer held up a hand. "I am simply telling you their claims." He consulted the file. "However, we have also received numerous calls from international organizations, and there is significant public interest in your case." He leaned forward. "Turkey respects its international obligations regarding those who seek protection. You will be granted temporary residence while your case is reviewed." You are not to leave Ankara without permission. You must report to this station weekly. Do you understand these terms? Relief flooded through me. Temporary residence wasn't asylum, but it wasn't deportation either. It was time. Time to build my case. Time to establish a life. Time to plan my next move. Yes, sir. I understand and accept. Then you are free to go. For now. The implied threat in those last two words was clear, but as I walked out of the station and into the Turkish sunshine, with Dr. Yildirim waiting to greet me, freedom, however provisional, felt like a miracle. The next morning, I awoke to my face on the front page of Hurriyet, one of Turkey's largest newspapers. The headline read, "Afghan musician flees communist regime, seeks freedom in Turkey." The article was largely sympathetic, portraying me as a young artist escaping oppression to pursue my musical calling in a more open society. But there were also statements from the Afghan embassy denouncing me as an ungrateful traitor who had abandoned my national duties. Most concerning were the reports that Afghan President Najibullah had personally demanded my return, calling my actions a betrayal of cultural heritage and warning of diplomatic consequences. This last piece of news came with a more personal blow. Dr. Yildirim received word through his contacts that one of my uncles, Ahmad Shah Sirkabi, a government minister in Afghanistan, had been summoned to Najibullah's office and pressured to locate me in Turkey and convince me to return. Indeed, a week later, a call came to Dr. Yildirim's home phone. My uncle Ahmad Shah, speaking from the Afghan embassy in Ankara, requested a meeting. The reunion took place in a quiet cafe in Çankaya. Dr. Yildirim accompanied me but sat at a separate table, allowing us to speak freely while keeping watch. My uncle looked older than I remembered, his face lined with new worries. When he embraced me, I could feel his genuine relief at finding me safe, but also the weight of his official mission. "Wahid," he said once we were seated, "what have you done?" "The president himself is demanding your return." "I've done what I needed to survive," I replied, keeping my voice low. "You know what happens to those who fall out of favor." "I was being watched, Uncle. My name was on lists." He didn't deny it. Instead, he glanced around and leaned closer. "Your mother cries every night," he said, a low blow that struck its target. "Your father barely speaks. They've been questioned repeatedly about your treasonous actions." Guilt washed over me. In my focus on my own survival, I had pushed thoughts of my family's predicament to the background. "Are they safe?" I asked, my throat tight. "For now, my position provides some protection, but I cannot shield them forever, especially if you continue to embarrass the government publicly." "I've made no political statements," I protested. "I've only asked for safety." "Your very absence is a statement," he countered. "But there is a solution. Return voluntarily. Apologize for the misunderstanding. Say you were confused, homesick. Najibullah has promised me personally that you will be treated well." I studied my uncle's face, the face of a man who had learned to navigate the treacherous waters of Afghan politics, who had compromised to survive. I loved him, but I could not follow his path. "We both know that's not true," I said quietly. "The moment I return, I'll disappear. If not immediately, then in a month, a year. When the attention fades, tell my parents I'm safe. Tell them I love them and think of them every day. But I cannot return. Not now, maybe not ever." My uncle's expression hardened. "Then you choose your freedom over their safety." The accusation cut deep, but I held firm. "I choose life over certain death. What good would my return do if I'm silenced forever? At least here I can speak. I can play my music. Perhaps one day I can even help them." With that warning, he left. I watched him go, my heart heavy with the knowledge that I might never see my family again, the price of my newfound freedom. As weeks turned into months, I began to build a semblance of a life in Ankara. Dr. Yildirim helped me enroll in a language school to improve my Turkish, which I was picking up quickly. My temporary residence permit was renewed, though my asylum case remained under review, a bureaucratic limbo that was both frustrating and protective. Through Dr. Yurdam, I met Zeynel Yasaleh, the director of the language school and a former government official with extensive connections in Turkish cultural circles. He took an interest in my musical background and invited me to his home, where I met his wife, Ilter, a renowned lyricist whose words had been set to music by some of Turkey's most famous singers. The Yasalehs became my second family, welcoming me into their world of artists, intellectuals, and musicians. Ilter, in particular, saw potential in our collaboration. She would write lyrics in Turkish, which I would then set to music that blended Afghan and Turkish musical traditions. "Your story gives the words power," she told me one evening as we worked on a new composition in their living room. The exile's perspective, seeing with fresh eyes what locals take for granted. Our first collaboration, a ballad called Ilk Defa, caught the attention of Ilter and Zeynel Yasaleh. We recorded this song in the studio. I experienced a surreal moment hearing my melody, inspired by traditional Afghan modes, but adapted to Turkish sensibilities. That day, we enjoyed doing that project together with Ilter. Zeynel used his connections to secure me a position performing nightly at an upscale lounge in Chankaya, where government officials and business leaders often gathered. The pay was modest but steady, and more importantly, it allowed me to practice my craft. To keep the music alive, it connected me to my homeland while building bridges to my new reality. But my protection was not absolute, as I discovered one spring morning when my peaceful routine was shattered. I was returning from the market when a black sedan pulled alongside me. Before I could react, two men in plain clothes flanked me, showing identification I barely glimpsed. "Wahid Sirkabi? Turkish intelligence. You will come with us." Inside a nondescript building, I was led to a stark interrogation room. When the door finally opened, a middle-aged man in an impeccable suit entered. He introduced himself only as Captain Erkin and placed a thick file on the table between us. "The Afghan government has escalated their requests for your return. They now claim you are not merely a contract breaker, but potentially a foreign agent." "That's absurd," I said, fear coiling in my stomach. "I'm a musician trained in Kyiv during your formative years," he countered. "A musician from a family with connections to the highest levels of the Afghan government. A musician who fled with the help of Kurdish separatists. Yes, we know about that part of your story that you conveniently omitted from your public statements. Turkey finds itself in a difficult position," Erkin continued. "We have relations with both the Soviet-backed Afghan government and with Western powers. Your case has become diplomatically inconvenient." For the next several hours, he interrogated me relentlessly. Finally, exhausted, I asked directly, "Are you planning to deport me?" Captain Erkin leaned back, studying me. "That decision has not been made, but understand this: your presence here is at our discretion. Your public profile has provided some insulation, but fame fades, Mr. Ralmid. In the end, nations act in their interests, not individuals." I was released on a street corner miles from my neighborhood, disoriented and shaken. The message had been delivered with crystal clarity. My sanctuary was conditional, revocable, and far from guaranteed. That night, after my final set at the lounge, I found Zeynel Yasaleh waiting at a corner table. One look at his grave expression confirmed my suspicions. Word of my detention had reached him. "Dr. Yurdam called me," he said as I sat across from him. "Are you all right?" I nodded mechanically. "They wanted to frighten me. They succeeded." Zeynel sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "The political winds are shifting. Turkey values its economic ties with both East and West. Individual refugees can become bargaining chips. What should I do? Continue as you have been, cautious, apolitical, focused on your music. But we should also consider alternatives. Alternatives? He leaned closer. Your asylum case here could drag on for years, keeping you in limbo. But there are other countries where your case might be viewed more favorably, places farther from Afghanistan's influence and with stronger traditions of artistic asylum. Where? Canada, perhaps, or Sweden. Countries with established refugee programs and Afghan diaspora communities. I have contacts who might help. The thought of another upheaval, another journey into uncertainty, was exhausting. And yet, the day's events had made it clear that Turkey might never be more than a temporary waypoint in my exile. Over the following weeks, I continued my routines, playing at the lounge, composing with Ilter, studying Turkish, but with a new vigilance. Dr. Yurdam, meanwhile, began quietly exploring options for my relocation. It was through his network that my case came to the attention of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. One afternoon, I received a call from Dr. Yurdam, his voice unusually animated. Wahid, a UNHCR officer, wants to meet with you. This could be significant. The meeting took place in a secured room at the UNHCR's Ankara office. The officer, a composed woman in her 40s with a British accent, introduced herself as Helen Forrester. Your case has been flagged in our system, she explained. Musicians, artists, and intellectuals facing persecution for their cultural expression fall within our special concerns category. The situation in Afghanistan continues to deteriorate, she said after reviewing my file. We've seen increasing reports of intellectual and cultural purges as the regime struggles to maintain control. Your assessment that returning would place you in grave danger appears well-founded. Hope flickered. Does that mean the UN will support my asylum claim here in Turkey? We could, she said carefully, but given certain geopolitical complexities, we believe you might be better served by third country resettlement. Several countries have refugee quotas specifically for Afghans at risk. Based on your profile, your education, your artistic background, your demonstrated ability to integrate culturally, you would be a strong candidate. Which countries? Currently, Canada has perhaps the most robust cultural support system for artists in exile and a significant Afghan community. Canada. The name conjured images of vast spaces, of safety, of distance thousands of miles from the reach of Najibullah's regime. I thought of my music, of how it might transform again in such a different landscape, absorbing new influences while keeping its Afghan heart. Ms. Forrester outlined the steps: application, background verification, interviews, medical examinations, cultural orientation, and finally, if approved, relocation with refugee status and a path to permanent residence. That evening, I played at the lounge with renewed purpose. After the final set, I returned to Dr. Yurdam's apartment, where he waited with tea and his patient ear. I told him of my decision. I'll apply for Canadian resettlement, I said. It's time to look beyond temporary safety. The application process began the following week. A blizzard of paperwork, interviews, and anxious waiting. I continued performing, now setting aside a portion of my earnings for what I had begun to think of as my Canadian fund. 4 months into the process, I received word that my application had advanced to the interview stage. A Canadian consular official would meet with me to assess my case personally, a critical step that could determine my fate. The consular official, a man named Keith, was younger than I expected, with a direct manner that was somehow both formal and friendly. Tell me, in your own words, why you cannot return to Afghanistan. I spoke of the increasing restrictions on artistic expression, of colleagues who had disappeared after creating works deemed problematic, of the subtle and not so subtle pressures I had faced to use my music for propaganda purposes. And why Canada, specifically? Keith asked when I had finished. Because music is not just what I do, it's who I am, I answered honestly. I've researched Canada's support for the arts, its multicultural society, its distance both geographical and political from Afghanistan's conflicts. I believe it's where I could not just survive, but eventually thrive and contribute. At the end, Keith closed his notebook and looked at me directly. Omid, Sir Kabi, I won't make promises I can't keep. The decision doesn't rest solely with me, and the process takes time. But Canada welcomes talented individuals like yourself, especially those fleeing persecution. We see the value you could bring to our cultural landscape. I took his advice to heart. Over the next weeks, I immersed myself in music with renewed vigor. With the Zainal Yasalai's family and friends, we organized a small party with me playing a guitar and showcasing our Turkish fusion compositions that I did with Ilter. 2 months later, as summer heat settled over Ankara, the call came. Dr. Yurdam answered the phone in his apartment, then handed it to me, his expression carefully neutral. Wahid Omid, this is Keith from the Canadian Embassy. I'm pleased to inform you that your application for resettlement has been approved. Canada will be happy to welcome you. The words seemed to hover in the air, too momentous to immediately absorb. We'll need about 3 weeks to process your final paperwork and arrange transportation. Can you come to the embassy tomorrow to begin those arrangements? Yes, of course. After hanging up, I stood motionless until Dr. Yurdam's hand on my shoulder brought me back to the present. Canada, I said simply. 3 weeks. His smile was both joyful and melancholy. Then we have preparations to make and some proper goodbyes. The final weeks in Turkey passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Yasalais organized a farewell gathering with the musicians and artists who had become my Turkish family. Ilter presented me with a bound collection of her lyrics, some still unset to music. For when you need inspiration in your new home, she said, embracing me. And remember, true artists are never fully exiled as long as they can create. Captain Erkin made one final appearance, approaching me outside the language school 2 days before my scheduled departure. Congratulations on your Canadian approval, he said without preamble. Our intelligence is quite efficient. A word of advice, Mr. Omid, he continued. Canada is far from Afghanistan, yes, but not beyond all reach. Remain the apolitical musician you've presented yourself as. It would be unfortunate if your newfound security made you careless. The day of departure arrived, clear and bright. Dr. Yurdam and the Yasalais accompanied me to Ankara Esenboga Airport, where Canadian officials met us with final paperwork and boarding passes. Write to us, Ilter insisted, pressing a package into my hands recordings of our collaborations, photos, mementos of my Turkish interlude. Dr. Yurdam's embrace was longest. You found your way once, he said quietly. You'll find it again. And remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. And I was through security, boarding the first of several flights that would carry me across continents to my new home. As the plane lifted off, I pressed my face to the window, watching Ankara recede, the city that had been both my prison and my sanctuary. In my carry-on bag were my few possessions: clothes, personal items, the lyric book from Ilter, a small Turkish drum, recordings of my performances, and one new acquisition, a simple notebook, its pages blank, waiting for the next movement of my ongoing composition. The symphony of my exile continued, changing key, introducing new themes, but always carrying within it the essential melodies of who I had been and who I was becoming. As the clouds enveloped the plane, I closed my eyes and began to imagine the music that might emerge in the vastness of Canada, sounds not yet heard born from the convergence of all I had lost and all I had yet to find. I was 21 years old, twice displaced, carrying nothing but memories and music, and somehow, improbably, still playing.